In today's build video, I'm going to be checking out NZXT's brand new H9 Flow RGB Plus and their new high-end 420mm cooler by building what might be the ultimate 2025 gaming PC build. Featuring the fastest CPU you can buy right now and the most powerful graphics card on the market, this is a system that is stacked with gaming performance. I'm also hoping the build is going to be pretty easy to put together, and I'll be taking you guys along for the ride, and of course, the gaming benchmarks a little bit later. Let's do this. The Corsair Frame 4000D is here and better than ever. With a spacious and fully modular design, you can configure this case to meet your build's exact needs. Improved airflow at the front and on the side helps to keep temperatures down, while Corsair's new InfiniRail mounting system allows you to adjust fan rails for added versatility and a cleaner aesthetic. What's more, it's compatible with reverse connector motherboards, 360mm all-in-one radiators, and comes with an integrated GPU anti-sag arm. Learn more and check it out at the first links in the description below. I'm going to start things off by looking at the H9 Flow because I'm impatient. I'm really intrigued to see what NZXT have done with their latest, I guess, flagship PC case. Oh, I feel like I'm going to get a static shock. Small one. It's big, I tell you that. It's my first impressions. It's definitely large. However, I really quite like it. There's a tempered glass side panel here, which, and this is a really good start, isn't too heavily tinted. So often, black PC cases have these horrible heavy side panel tints. This version comes with all the fans you're gonna need, really, a 120mm at the rear, and then these F420 units, which are basically three 140mm fans stuck together on the bottom and at the back side of the case. These fans are angled, a bit like we saw on their H6 Flow, so that's going to help with airflow and ventilation, but also still give you that like fish tank look at the front of the chassis, which I like. Now, it is a dual chamber case as well, so your power supply and stuff is all going to fit into the rear of the chassis. All the panels and stuff feel pretty well built. There's plenty of ventilation, very little sort of worrying panel flex there. And at the back, room for super long ATX power supplies, some good cable management options, room for some older style SSDs or hard drives down the bottom, and then all the front panel cables too. Now, this case is quite expensive, but the good thing is that all you need is a cooler at the top and all your fans and all your airflow is going to be complete. So that's going to make things, especially for first-time builders or those of us who just want to be a bit lazy, a little bit easier. I'll talk about the cooler now while I'm here. This is NZXT's latest Kraken Elite 420 RGB. Now, it comes with the same all-in-one fan unit that you'll see on the side and on the bottom of the case. Again, makes things look a bit cleaner, makes cable management a bit easier. And let's face it, you're never going to run a radiator with like 2 of the 3 fans. So in terms of actually being a bit more versatile, there's not really any trade-offs here. One thing NZXT have always done a good job of on coolers is screens, and I believe that this particular unit is no different, with a pretty large screen on the front and an RGB ring around the side. That's super glossy. That's going to be a fingerprint nightmare later. And of course, little creature comforts like pre-applied RGB on the bottom as well. Pre-applied RGB, pre-applied thermal paste. There's plenty of RGB, but not on the bottom of the cooler. Anyway, cooler-wise, this is potentially a slight downside already compared to some other options. The fans don't come pre-attached, which is a bit weird. Normally, nowadays, you're going to get the fans pre-installed to the radiator, but that gives you an idea of the pretty large triple 140mm unit that I actually really like and I think looks pretty sleek. That's, of course, going to go on this pretty humongous 420mm AIO, and quite cool, NZXT have built in what looks to be the hub for the RGB and the screen into where the tubes come out of the radiator, which helps to keep things a nice standard size. As far as what the CPU cooler will be cooling, I've gone for this, the Ryzen 9800X3D, which is of course the fastest gaming CPU on the market right now, and for the money is frankly amazing value. The MSRP is like under $400, and for that it basically destroys everything else from AMD and Intel, even if they cost twice as much money. As far as memory or RAM goes, I'm sticking with the high-end theme. I've gone for this kit of Corsair's Dominator. This titanium kit is 48GB, and as you can see, if I open up the box, we've got these lovely, beautiful black RAM DIMMs that should match the aesthetic of today's build pretty perfectly. me. Storage-wise, I've picked up the Samsung 9100 Pro. This particular drive is 4 terabytes, which is probably a tiny bit overkill, but this is Samsung's Gen 5 entrant. As far as the motherboard for today's build goes, I didn't want to go too high-end, and I ummed and ahed as to whether to go for B850 or X870. Why? Because although the 9800X3D is overclockable, you can't really get much extra speed out of it. Nevertheless, I did choose to go for a high-end X870 board, but not a silly one, not one that's going to cost you like $500 or $600. This far more modest GeekaWhat AORUS X870 Elite Wi-Fi. I actually think GeekaWhat have been doing a really good job on their motherboards the last generation or so. And as you can see here, this board's got everything that we need. Obviously got the AM5 socket here, which works on the whole Ryzen lineup. Also got the DDR5 RAM DIMMs. We've got plenty of Gen 5 support for the graphics card and all of the NVMe drives. And the I/O is really good too. You can see here we've got loads of high-speed USBs, Wi-Fi 7 support, 2.5 gig Ethernet, and even an optical audio output. So yeah, really solid board that gives you the top-end chipset at a price that, I mean, this build's not cheap, but it's a price that I would say is somewhat reasonable. I'm also going to talk about the GPU before going ahead and putting this thing together. I have, of course, gone for the NVIDIA RTX 5090. This is the highest end card right now. I also think NVIDIA Founders Edition GPUs tend to look really nice in NZXT cases. I think the design languages match up. The Founders Edition design is also far smaller than some of the, frankly, ridiculously large 5090s out there. Let me grab one to show you what I mean. I mean, look at the size difference of those two cards. And if I flip them on the sides, it's an even more dramatic comparison. You can see there is an absolutely enormous difference between these. I really like the design of the Master, but when you can get the Founders at this size, for me, it's a bit of a no-brainer. With that being said though, I think it's time to put this thing together, and I'm going to start, as always, with the CPU, the RAM, the SSD, and the motherboard. Evolving into dance then. Nice and easy to install. Just going to lift up the arm on the AM5 socket, drop the CPU into place, little something like so, and return the socket cover back down. Second and fourth RAM DIMMs for the Dominator titanium memory. Quite chunky kit, but should be fine clearance-wise. Bit of pressure on both sides and get that clicked in to place. Finally, the last thing to do is the NVMe drive. So I'm going to pull the cover off. Remember to remove, of course, this plastic protective peel before sliding the drive into place and popping the cover back down. I am just going to check as well before moving the motherboard into the case whether there's any CPU cooler prep I can do. I think this might have the Intel bracket pre-installed, but let me grab the manual and actually check for certain. Quite a very large poster. AMD, yes. So I can use my fancy new camera. Watch this. Yes, look at that. Wait, no, hang on, which page? This page. No? Yes. Oh, wow. Look at that. So we've got to remove the AMD brackets and then put these 4 posts on. If there's any camera nerds watching, how f***ing cool is that? One more time. Ready? Instructions. Motherboard. Instructions. It's good. A simple case of sliding the motherboard assembly in. The H9 is so big that realistically the whole thing's just really easy to work in. You've not got any issues squeezing the motherboard, and if I can find it, the center standoff is raised, which will hold the board into place while you screw it in. All the screws come easily labeled. There'll be 3 at the top, 3 down at the bottom, and then just 2 in the middle. As I say, the center standoff is blocked out to keep the motherboard in. The next step is getting the radiator in, and taking a look, there is loads of clearance at the top of this case. So even once that's in, all the power connectors and stuff are still going to be really easy to access. I am going to take off the top panel of the case, which is very easy, and obviously nicely ventilated to give us good airflow. And what I'm going to do is just hover the radiator in roughly where I want it to sit. Why? Because I need to work out my fan and tube locations. The rad is going to go in there without too many problems. It's definitely on the snug side, but it fits. And then I've got this all-in-one fan unit, which is probably going to go in this orientation so that the cable is actually, imagine the fans are inside the case, routing out the back and not going to be particularly seen. What that means is that the cable is going to be at the opposite end to the control hub, and they're going to be using the 4 screw holes in each corner to get this secured in. In terms of getting the radiator in, I'm going to run the cable through first, although, as I say, there's only one, which makes life really easy, and then get the rad lined up. You might have to do it at a bit of an angle. There we go, little something like so, before then screwing it down with with the included screws, and this is, well, a bit of a challenge. However, once you're 2 screws down, you can kind of relax and take it a little bit easier with the final 10 screws, so 12 screws in total. It is important with the radiator to install as many of these as you reasonably can, just because there's quite a lot of weight, and also what we don't want to do is put any excess pressure on one particular bit of the case mounting channels. In order to install the CPU block, I am actually going to flip the case onto its back. I'm so conscious of all the fingerprints on this. I don't want to like hold it up and get it really dirty. So instead, as I say, I'm going to slide, oh, that was close, the case over and get this secured down. Just need to remove the plastic protector to stop you getting the thermal paste everywhere, and then take off the pre-installed Intel brackets, swap these out for these AMD brackets instead. And then once that's done, I'm then going to pop the CPU cooler into place. Just checking I'm happy with the tube locations. I think that looks good to me. And then securing down the thumb screws, you can see this one here, and I'm going to add the other 3 on too. Get these nice and tight. It's starting to look pretty good, but it's missing a couple of big things. The GPU, but actually any sort of power cables or front panel connectors for that fact too. That's where this comes in, the NZXT C1500 Platinum. And I'm going to be really honest, you don't need this power supply. It's about 500 watts overkill compared to what the 5090 build uses. However, we're building an ultimate gaming PC. NZXT kindly sent it over to take a look at with the new H9. It felt like it was a worthy thing to include and at least consider. They do have a 1200 watt version though, which I feel is far more appropriate, and I'll link that down in the description below as well. Now, straight off the bat, there's one thing I've noticed, and I'm not a huge fan, I've got to admit, and it's these cables. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them per se. They're just not very nice. My plan for this build was to use PSU cable extensions anyway, so I guess it kind of doesn't matter. However, what I would say is take Corsair's new RME lineup of power supplies. The 750 watt can be under $100, and that comes with individually nylon sleeve cables, rather than these, which are, they're just like wrapped and heat shrunk, and kind of made me a bit sad really. So much so that if I actually had a 1000 watt RME, I would probably just put that in instead. I'm gonna stick with this because the wattage might be handy, but I really wish those cables were better. I feel quite sad now in a roundabout sort of way. Give me a moment to get this wired up. I'll stop complaining. I'll get the power supply in, get all of the cables ran, including the GPU one, which can be put ready into place, and also do all the front panel cables at this stage. Everything from the HD audio on the bottom left, the JFP one on the bottom right, and then of course USB 3 Type A and Type C for the cases front panel too. And the final thing is then to pop the 5090 Founders Edition in. And I think in this case, it might end up looking a little small. So that's going to slot into the top GPU slot in the case today, means taking out the 3rd and 2nd PCIe bracket covers. So as you can see here, it's this one, nice and simple. And of course the one directly below. Keep these screws safe, as I'm going to be using these to actually fasten the brackets back. Make sure that's pushed down, the retention clip already is in my case, and then slide the Founders Edition card into place. You can see what I mean about that being a good match for this build, right? It actually works perfectly. There is one thing I need to dunk on NZXT for, and that's actually, it's a very particular thing, but really important, and that is the length of this, which is the USB cable for the all-in-one radiator harness. Now, this comes from the actual top of the radiator to control, for example, the AIO screen. And while I don't mind the position of the controller, the cable reel is big and bulky, and that isn't going to reach in NZXT's own case to the USB headers, meaning I'll need to use some sort of extender or splitter. A minor thing, but something NZXT should really look at, because if it doesn't fit in their case, what look has anybody else got? With that being said though, I'm going to get this thing finished, power it up, and I can't wait to check out the performance of what is a pretty killer rig. Taking a look at performance then, and this build performs pretty much exactly as you'd expect. The RTX 5090 and 9800X3D combo are pretty sensational, and in everything from Call of Duty's Black Ops 6 to Cyberpunk and Hogwarts at 4K, frame rates are really good. Taking a closer look at some of these titles, and in Black Ops 6, the build pulled in over 150 FPS at 4K high settings. Hogwarts Legacy saw the build at near enough a similar level with 142 FPS all told, and Alan Wake 2 was at
actually the lowest performance of any title I tested today with 87 FPS, which is still more than enough at 4K high for this kind of RPG title. If you want to buy any of the parts mentioned in today's build, you can find links to them down below, and you can also find some of the builds we assemble on the channel as pre-built for my UK viewers at GeekaPC, also linked in the description below. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.